Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation. Welcome back. I hope 2022 is going well for you. Today's podcast guest is Wade Lightheart, a 3-time former Canadian All-Natural Bodybuilding champion, and then he went on to form a company that you've probably heard me mention on Zestology, my podcast partners, and it is BiOptimizers. They've come up with some superb products and some very advanced products as well, including Masszymes, which sponsors today's podcast, and they're just very cutting edge at what they do. So Wade very much knows his stuff, and delighted to have him on today's podcast, where we talk natural immunity, what's been going on with the pandemic over the last couple of years, and loads of other topics. Here he is, Wade Lightheart on Zestology. It's strange that with so much going on in terms of sickness in the world, we really don't think about preventative medicine very much. And this concept of functional medicine, I mean, even my mates, most of my friends think I'm the sort of health nut, and they wouldn't even know the expression functional medicine, which is fine. I love them. They can get on with it. But I just find it so interesting that we don't really talk about gut immunity or, natural ways to ward off disease and so forth.
It's I've just had Dr. Ovadia, who is a heart doctor, who was morbidly obese, and he just wrote a new book. He was 100 pounds overweight. He's out of Chicago, Dr. Phil Ovadia, on my podcast the other day. And he talks about, so we can have a nuanced conversation that is in alignment with our medical dictates and authorities. And what we need to look at, and now that we have the technology capable of providing it, is metabolic health. So metabolic health, there's a metrics of parameters that you can say. So if you look at comorbidity, so let's look at the situation and what's going on. The people who are most at risk have a few different issues that they're dealing with, okay? Number one, waist circumference, 40 for men, 35 for women. The implications have caused an average weight gain of approximately 30 pounds of the population. Is that moving towards where we want to go or away from what we go?
Yeah.
Moving away. Blood pressure needs to be less than 130 over 85. Okay. How many people's blood pressure went up versus down over the stress, anxiety, loss of work, loss of job, uncertainty, inability to travel, inability to socialize, all these sort of things, which the psychological impacts, the research is coming out about it, devastating. Okay. Fasting blood glucose less than 100. Okay. If you look at the rise of a diabetic response, blood sugar issues, and things like this, overeating through anxiety and stuff like that, sitting at home, not exercising as gyms and facilities are being limited in their exposure, right? Cholesterol panel, with your low DL and your LDL and your triglycerides. Your triglycerides in particular need to be over less than 150. Okay. You got 3 or more of these things. You got metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is what is causing the comorbidities that makes you more likely, whatever age that you happen to be. Have you heard anybody inside of the media talking about the use of vitamin D, talking about the use of vitamin C, talking about the use of vitamin C, of regular exercise, exposure to sunshine, of getting your blood sugar over, your body fat percentage? Why is this not being promoted as much as masking and social distancing? Because there's no money in it. And the institutions who are directing our people are not against it, are against any form of self responsibility and taking care of our health. And as BiOptimizers, we've been doing this since 2004. I've been in biological optimization my whole life. First as a performance guy in bodybuilding, then as a sports nutritionist running a holistic health clinic, and now as a co-founder and president of BiOptimizers, which started out in digestive health. I had my own digestive health problems and corrected them. And then moving into nervous system and cognitive health as well, which is suffering exponentially across the population. And so our message to people is today, we have, if we look at what's possible, genetics, epigenetics, hormone testing, biometric tracking, whether it's fasting glucose, your ability to get blood pressure checks at your house, your ability to determine genetic risk factors and epigenetical influences and stuff. The technology that is capable in the biohacking community today is 40 years ahead of what is being broadcast to the general public as our healthcare system. And so if we put the technology capable today in the biohacking community and with functional medicine practitioners, and you put us head to head against most of the institutions that we are trusting for our advice around this and other healthcare issues, it's a no contest. This is like a high school team going against a professional Premier League soccer elite team. It's an absolute devastation. It's not comparable because the current messaging is not current. It is not relevant. And many of the advocates who are putting it out there are frankly incompetent and not up to date with the current availabilities and technologies. So it's up to us to present solutions that have been definable, provable, and repeatable amongst the population to protect themselves through a sense of action, by taking action ourselves, taking responsibility ourselves, not deferring responsibility to authorities, but looking at our family, looking what we're putting in our foods, looking what we're doing as a lifestyle and saying, you know what, I can control my destiny through positive health promoting activities. And that's what I'm here for. That's what we're here to talk about. That's what we get excited about. And, I think once we flip this switch, I think the opportunity that's lying on the other side of this, because the authorities have frankly are losing credibility by the day with their purported solutions.
Yeah, it's quite depressing, isn't it? And I think it's been the whole thing is even more polarized and politicized in the US than it is in the UK, although it is in the UK as well. But I think there's just a sort of a full-on culture reputation war going on in the US, and I can only see it getting worse.
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the history of the U.S., first and foremost, you have the renegade mind of individuals. The United States ancestral components were founded on people who broke away from the tyranny of the monarchy of Europe, the various monarchies of Europe.
Mostly the British monarchy, I think.
And if yes, but even so, you got to realize that the German settlers almost became the United States primary language by only one vote. So we're fed an information about the British, but through much of the case, my own ancestry is part German. And we have a huge German heritage in the town that I grew up in, Canada, which was part of the whole Eastern Seaboard, which was populated by people escaping of feudal Europe, which was continuous in wars. Yeah, and you had to turn over everything to the monarchy and all that sort of stuff. So the people who decided they would risk life and limb to come here, and then the founding fathers created a constitutional component. And if you read the Constitution, they're talking about the injustices against the tyrannical regimes of the monarchy, particularly the British monarchy, and ironically was supported by the French in that war. So the war broke out, and then, of course, later on, it was recognized that there was another form of tyranny in the form of apartheid. There was a two-person society in that Black people didn't have the equal rights under what was the constitutional aspirations. And I would like to say that I believe that the Constitution at the time was aspirational and wasn't quite canonized, and that it was like, here's what we're going to try to build, and that we have to recognize that took time. And that war was fought of course, under Lincoln, which was a divisive time, but really didn't come to full fruition until Martin Luther King came forth and the Rosa Parks thing. And then we saw the transformation of society in the 60s. And now it's trying to be whitewashed right now. There's a bunch of debate. But what I'm saying is the United States of America, for better or for worse, are willing to have an open and spirited debate, more so than any country I've been to. I'm a Canadian by nature. It's very passive, and frankly have ceded to the tyrannical reign of Trudeau, who is operating much of a puppet of these private institutions. And I'd say that as a Canadian citizen who's horrified by what's happened in Canada. And, my parents, because they're not, they don't want to get the jab. My father had heart surgery, and the literature says that the information means that he's at significant risk if he takes the jab. That's a medical responsible, and he has no alternative. If he doesn't take it, he can't go to restaurants. He can't go to movie theaters. He can't go to public areas. So my dad, who has a legitimate medical condition and reason to resist getting the purported and regulated component, is now a second-rate citizen in Canada, a country which he has devoted his entire tax income to. He's paid income tax since the 1960s, when he started work, his entire life. And now he's regulated to a second-tier citizen, even though he has a legitimate medical history as well as a family history that says this is not a good idea for him. He's at significant risk, having had heart surgery during the pandemic. And so the reality is there's a lot of people inside of that. So is it worth killing 50,000 of those folks, or 100,000 of those folks, or 250,000 of those folks? So if you apply the same mentality behind it, then we have to recognize that we've got to support our health through alternative manners, and as we need to be responsible as possible for our own health. And my responsibility is to my health. Your responsibility is to your health. You're not responsible for my health, and there's an associated risk with living, and that's just part of being a human.
Yeah. And then looking at some of the specifics, and I know you and I talked a bit about digestion before, and we wanted to do so again. Enzymes and Masszymes is one of the products that I love of yours. Not only because I think, it's good practice in terms of immunity, but also because if you're going for a night out, I quite like it as a bit of a sort of hack with the food. Yes. It sort of helps your gut. And I went out with some mates recently, and, it was a fairly heavy meal, sort of steaky, and a few drinks as well. And I had a bit of Masszymes on me and just felt fine the next day. So I think that's a sort of a nice hack that actually draws in the people who might not be that interested in the sort of health hacks in the first place.
Yes. And, I believe that enzymes, and I've been on the forefront of enzyme advocacy since I competed at the Mr. Universe in 2003 and made a recovery from my performance-based lifestyle. And enzymes, for those who don't know, are the catalysts of over 25,000 chemical reactions inside your body. Everything from thinking to blinking requires an enzyme. Yeah. And every species on the planet consumes its food in a raw state, which gets the living enzymes within that, along with the protein, fats, carbohydrates, minerals, and the phytonutrients. But humans in our infinite wisdom have figured out how to cook food, which destroys all enzymes, pasteurization, irradiation, all the methodologies we use to prepare, store, and cook our food, or preserve our food, are all eradicate enzymes, because enzymes begin the breakdown process. The digestive process is facilitated by a variety of enzymes. And the enzyme bank account, as put forth by Edward Howell, is a limited supply within all humans. And as his test from rats to cats to horses to sheep to everything, he found that if you have an enzymatically deficient diet by third generation, you see a proliferation of genetic-based diseases, strange social behavior, and the inability to procreate, and predicted this would happen to humans after World War II, when we started changing how we produce, preserve, and transport our food. So here we are, and he's accurate. All of those things have come to pass. And what I've advocated is the use of digestive health enzymes, which can be converted into systemic enzymes if eaten on an empty stomach, and can be used as a digestive aid. And what this does is it accelerates and preserves our body's own metabolic supply of enzymes, and so that you can support your digestive health. Now, why is that important? Well, if you look at your immune system responds to foreign invaders. And one of the most common foreign invaders is undigested proteins inside the body. Viruses have a protein coating which connects onto the cells. Food that gets through your gut and a leaky gut, and Harvard just released a paper recently that suggested that virtually everyone has some level of leaky gut. All of these inflammatory markers create a cascade of white blood cell formation inside the blood, which is an inflammatory response. So you get stuffed up, you feel crusty-eyed in the morning. There's an inflammatory response in your system to a foreign invader, whether that's a virus, whether that's an undigested protein, whether that's something that causes an irritation like an allergy, which is usually an undigested protein of some sort that your body has an overcompensationary response to. Then enzymes serve as the bridge to metabolize that food in a way that converts it from what you eat into the usable amino acids or energy units that your body creates. And so we created a product called Masszymes. It's enzymes for the masses, 17 different enzymes. It has carbohydrates, plant proteins, fats, and particularly on all different types of proteins or different proteases. So that is the first step of making sure. So how do I know if I need digestive enzymes? Someone will say, well, I don't know if I need this. Do I need this? How do I, wait, what are you talking about? It's very simple. If you suffer from acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, bloating, the feeling of a stone in your stomach, either constipation or, you got the runs, any one of those conditions, if you have blemishes, if you're suffering from low mood, you're more susceptible to depression, inflammatory response in your bowels or in your guts after you eat, that bloated feeling. Well, guess what? 9 times out of 10, taking a few enzymes before you eat, high quality, I would say enzymes, then you're going to see a major eradication. Now, in the result of having a few drinks, well, in order for your body to metabolize alcohol, it requires an enzymatic response in order to convert that alcohol into usable energy units, as opposed to becoming stored as a negative glycerol-based fats inside your liver. Well, guess what? Masszymes does an incredible job at assisting you in metabolizing of alcohol, and I can say that I've had hundreds and hundreds of friends who will testify that a handful of enzymes after a night at the pub is remarkable at how it makes you feel the next morning. So you're able to see a definable, effective result from that. It also speeds recovery from training, injuries, all of these things that people subjected to. And so enzymes are that metabolic advantage that allows you to suddenly write more health checks. And then we can move into the other side of it, which is how probiotics work with your immune system. And if you want to dive into that, we can jump into that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think the Masszymes, I think it's it's my little secret that I'm very bad at metabolizing alcohol. And every time I tell anyone else that, they say, I am as well. And maybe it's something to do with age as well. But I certainly think that, that, and then, yes, targeted probiotics as well. And I know that those are 2 of your sort of products that have gone down particularly well.
Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by an incredible product from BiOptimizers called Masszymes. It is a best-in-class supplement loaded with full-spectrum enzymes for digesting proteins, starches, sugars, fibres and fats. What it basically does is supercharges your digestion. Your poor old digestion has gone through the festive and holiday season desperately working hard over all the indulgent foods that you've been getting in there, and what it does is it gives you a bit of a helping hand. So now that we're into January, now that we're feeling it's time to focus a little bit more on our immunity and maybe on our gut as well, taking Masszymes daily helps top off your enzyme levels and replaces the enzymes your body is no longer producing, which means you can eat all sorts of delicious stuff and digest them quickly and effortlessly. I think life is too short to suffer digestion problems. It really is.
So try Masszymes risk-free and see what improvements you notice. You can go to masszymes.com/zestology. You can use the code zestology10 for a 10% discount. And just a quick reminder that with all the BiOptimizers products, when you try it, if you don't like it, they'll give you a refund, which is sort of where the risk-free element comes in. And also for a limited time, they're giving away various other products on there as well. I've had a look on that site over the last 10 days or so. P3OM and HCl with selected purchases. So it's masszymes.com/zestology, and just give your gut a bit of a rest. As I say, life is too short to go through these digestion problems, and I think it is important to try out various supplements, track your progress, and see what improvements you notice. Masszymes.com/zestology. If you're in the UK, you can use the code zestology10 as well at bioptimizers.co.uk. That's it. Back to the show.
So yeah, let's talk about obviously Masszymes and then probiotics as well. What have you found, and what do people really need in terms of probiotics? Because I think it's still sort of fairly niche. I think, what percentage of the population takes probiotics? Probably not that high.
Yeah, and what percentage takes effective probiotics would be even lower. And so first and foremost, I want to say that I'm delighted to report that we have a partnership with the International Birch University in Croatia, where we are subjecting probiotics to a variety of environmental stressors, testers, in a way to improve the response, the growth rates, the effectiveness of probiotics, as well as to ensure that the probiotics we produce are sustainable in the gastrointestinal tract. And we're one of the very few supplement companies, and we have PhDs in microbiome who are running regular tests all the time that Matt and myself can dream up, and as well as the researchers themselves. What foods they grow on, what's the impact of EMFs? Is there vitamins and minerals that can enhance the growth rates or effectiveness or the production of antioxidants, which aid in our immune system? And we've made a wild number of breakthroughs. And from those breakthroughs, we funnel those into our products and services to help maintain the gastrointestinal tract. So recognize this, that probiotics, or your immune system in general, which is part of the digestive system, about 80% of it is in your gut. And your probiotics are the good guys that fight off the bad guys. Okay, that's to make it really, really simple. You have 10% good, 10% bad, and 80% opportunists, which vary from stress, diet, lifestyle, artificial stimulants, and natural stimulants. And all of these will be changing what's called your microbiome, which is the collective group of these. And we live in a symbiotic relationship with these probiotics. In other words, our ability to digest food, to convert food into energy units or into building blocks is dependent on these. So we had a public education manner. When I grew up in school, they told us that bacteria was something to be bad and needed to be killed and destroyed at all things, which again goes back to our pharmaceutical conditioning. And there's a certain amount of truth to that, because the advent of antibiotics saved millions of lives. And many of us are here today. If you look at the rise of food production and antibiotics, those two things drove the population up extensively over the last 80 years. They've also collectively weakened the immune system of those individuals and created a bunch of digestive issues by damaging or destroying the healthy probiotics that are part of the symbiotic relationship that bolster our immune system and help us enhance our digestion. So we've identified the most potent strains of bacteria, what they live on, how they work in conjunction. So you can't just take a bunch of probiotics and hope they work, because there are families of probiotics which work together. There are dietary practices that would lead you to one set of probiotics versus another. Like Matt is a ketogenic guy. He does well on a ketogenic diet, and I'm a plant-based guy. We're at polar opposites.
Run the company with.
Yeah. And we don't see our opposing dietary strategies as opposing. We're choosing the dietary strategy that we both follow that works for us, our genetics, our epigenetics, and our ability to conform to that. He likes to eat very infrequently, high-fat, high-protein meals. I don't do well on high-fat meals. I like to eat more frequently. I like a low-protein diet and high carbohydrate and low-fat. So we couldn't get at different things, but What we have found is that our microbiomes are radically different, as is our genetics. And we can select particular probiotics in particular groups and families of enzymes to support the food that we are eating and to offset limitations within our own genetics. And from that, we've been able to determine that there are a number of strains. And the one that is most important in regards to immune system function is a strain called L. plantarum. Now, we were able to take L. plantarum, which is a robust bacteria, which has a lot of extraordinary properties in immune system response. But the good news is we were able to put it through a Navy SEAL type training. In other words, we put it through a toxic soup. We ran a sine wave through it that supported it. And about 2 to 3% of these probiotics will survive that, but they have mutated and developed unusual capabilities. Now, you take those strains and you grow them on very special mediums. And we just had a recent breakthrough that I can't wait to include in our upcoming products next year about the mediums that we can grow the bacteria on. And the result of this will be this. I cannot make the statements of what P3OM, our super enhanced patented probiotic, is. The US government has given us a patent on this product. And if you go to our website, you can list it. But put it this way, I'm very confident about my capability to handle undigested proteins and variants of a multiple threats that are subjecting that the world is subjected to today. I feel no fear. I know that I can outnumber them with my good guys over whatever bad guys or foreign invaders or agents that are coming into my immune system, and we're able to do that. And so check out our website. You can see and read the patent for yourself. I can't state it because they'll take us off the air.
Okay, well, that's good. And I know the code Zestology10 works right across the world for that. And we've set up a particular site for this month, which is Masszymes.com/Zestology. I'll mention more about that at the end of the show anyway. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of all your products, and I will never go anywhere without taking Magnesium Breakthrough as well. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. And I take it at least twice a day. So it's a great product. So I like them all, but that is probably my favorite. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll send you out some Nutopia products. You'll like the cognitive enhancement company we started called Nutopia. It's we've got a cult-like following amongst the health optimization and brain optimization crew. And we've been able to crack the codes into neurochemical optimization.
I like the sound of a cult following. Okay, excellent, Wade. Yeah. Well done. And well, listen, I've got to ask you the two questions I ask everyone. I've asked you before, but let's see what answers you come up with this time. What is one book that you would recommend and one tip for living with more energy?
Well, I got this shirt on today, my 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Clean your room and tell the truth, it says on my t-shirt. The red lobster he's been attacked viciously. He's Canada's most famous psychologist, controversial, I might add.
Very controversial,
Very controversial, but his book, 12 Rules for Life and 12 More Rules, which came out recently, I think they're great for people. I think its ability to take very complex ideas into actionable results is great. And I always love practical applications.
Now, what about one tip then for living with more energy, Wade? It's I feel like, this is an audio podcast, but people will be able to see the screen grabs on the website. The backdrop where you are is just gorgeous in Venice Beach. The backdrop where I am is fairly gloomy, going to be honest, 5:00 on a fairly wet Wednesday here. I feel it's easier to live healthy when you've got all that lovely light and fresh air outside. But what is your one tip?
Well, I think it's important for people to cultivate a conscientious breathing practice. I think as a general rule, sitting most of the time, as most of us are, we're only consuming about 30% of the oxygen that we could be. And more importantly, we are building up carbonic wastes inside the body, which have a negative effect. And the research has shown that sitting is the new form of smoking. And I do believe it's because we're not getting full deep breaths. And so I would encourage people this year to take a breathing course online. take a Tai Chi course, go to a yoga class, take a meditation course, and learn a variety of different breathing practices. It's something you can do unconsciously on its own or consciously. Yeah. And I have found that you can take a person that is absolutely dead tired and, with zero energy, and take them to an aggressive 3 to 5 minute breathing practice and completely reoxygenate their body. And so I would say that fatigue, which a lot of people are experiencing, or low energy, is not so much that you don't have enough food or you don't have enough sleep, is that you haven't been able to convert the oxygen into what our Oriental friends in traditional Eastern medicine would call chi energy, pranic energy, life force. And your capability of converting that is directly result of deep breathing and specialized breathing practices. And once you've engaged in that, and I can actually feel the life force course to different parts of the body, and I have a practice where I send life force to every part of my body, and that sounds woo-woo, but anyone who's heard a great piece of music felt that hair standing up on the back of your edge, and that life force, the invigoration of life force energy and sexual ecstasy, or one of those things. Know that there's energy systems outside of what we would traditionally refer to in our medical industry. And these were well identified and practiced on how to enhance and invigorate the body in Eastern philosophy, which I'm a big fan of. And I would encourage people to do that. And guess what? It will cost you almost nothing, and will probably do more for your health than virtually any other practice that you can perform.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Actually, I did a Qigong course about a year and a half ago, and I've got a very regular practice now. And I noticed the same thing, but I also noticed there's a sort of an anxiety and edginess sometimes that just goes away if I do. I mean, I'll normally do a 20-minute practice, but it could be less. And I'm sure it's the breath aspect, which is the most important. I like the movement. I like the mindfulness as well. And it's also based around the different parts of the day and the different parts of the body. But really, it's the breath. And I definitely feel less edgy when I do it. It's just great, isn't it?
Yeah, well, depression tends to be the focusing on the past, and anxiety tends to be focusing on the future. And through the practice of watching one's breath and participating in something like Tai Chi, which is very present-centered, if you're moving while you're breathing, what happens is you move away from an anxious future or a horrific past into the present moment. And therefore the nervous system moves, out of sympathetic into parasympathetic, a regulatory response. And all of a sudden, you process information differently, and boom, you're feeling present again. And what that does is tend to release and free up energy away from the muscles and back into the central nervous system, which is supportive of rest and relaxation.
Great. Yeah. Oh, I'm pleased you do that. Wade, it's great to talk to you again. Great to connect. We've covered a few topics over the last 45 minutes or so. I'll obviously mention the website in terms of the Masszymes and Zestology one. I'll go through that again, but just let everyone know where they can find more about you, more about BiOptimizers.
Well, they can follow along. I'm halfway through my 50 weeks to 50 right now. I'm getting into Mr. Universe competitive condition again at 50 years old.
Great.
No drugs, no TRT, no chemicals, just advocating the awesome health formula, which is available on our BiOptmizer site. It's a whole course, 84 days, 12 weeks of health optimization practices. It costs you nothing. It'll give you an entire philosophy. Also, they can look at our Sick to Superhuman book, which is basically the 10 best practices that you can implement for biological optimization, which we talked about early in the podcast, which is what is the latest science? What do I need to track, and what do I need to manipulate in order to produce a robust immune system? We give all that way on our website, and you can follow us on Instagram, social media, all those sort of things.
Well, that's it for today's podcast. A quick reminder that it is brought to you by Wayne's company and Wayne's product, Masszymes. Superb. So important and so good, and definitely worth you getting involved with. And if you want that 10% off, you can go to masszymes.com/
Zestology. That is Masszymes.com/Zestology. There's loads of resources there. There's sort of extra freebies that they're doing at the moment as well. And it's just sort of amazing what you do when you give your digestion a little bit of a helping hand. Thank you for listening to Zestology. And, I hope 2022 is going great for you. That's it from me. I'll see you next week.